Just a pre-warning, a warning. All right. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order. It appears everyone's here except for Sylvia. She'll be here shortly, I believe, on the screen. So declare a quorum. And be our meeting for November 19th. Oh, thank you. So public comment is our first item of business. I think Celeste, you asked to speak about the budget during public comment. Yeah, please, since you had to go someplace else. So, you get 3 minutes. I don't know. You can, could you come up here because then just introduce yourself and.
Have my seat, Celeste.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody. My name is Celeste Landry, and I know a lot of you. Thank you for your service as library board trustees. As some of you know, I was on the library commission serving from late 2010 through March of 2014. As I wrote so I'm going to talk about the budget, but thank you for letting me do that. As I wrote in a February 2022 letter to the editor in support of creating a library district, if the library were funded adequately, then we commissioners would not have considered library districts as a financial solution. So back when I was on the library commission, the library was open until 9 p.m. Monday through Thursday. We would have evening library commission meetings in the Arapahoe conference room. Now the library closes at 7 p.m. A book discussion group that I'm in had to start meetings at 5:30 so we could finish by 7 p.m. And I think because of that, our attendance has fallen a bit. People who work during the day need the library to be open later. After I speak at this meeting, I'm going to a restaurant in Boulder for a planning meeting for a new book group. The group is not going to meet at the Boulder Main Library because the meeting time is from 6 to 7:30 and the library closes at 7. Instead, we will be meeting at the Lafayette Library, which stays open until 8 p.m. I checked the hours of other nearby libraries, Louisville, Longmont, they both stay open till 8 p.m. And frankly, it's a little embarrassing that the library closes at 7 p.m. I feel like Boulder should be a model for the neighboring communities and our library should stay open later, preferably till 9. With library district funding, you've got more funding and stable funding. You celebrate library district promises delivered and touted restoring hours at all library locations to pre-COVID-19 pandemic levels. Right now, I'm trying to point out that our hours had fallen even before COVID, and that's why we worked so hard to get a library district. So please restore hours to the 9 p.m. closing time. That's the promise that I thought I was voting for when I supported the library district. Thanks.
Thanks, Celeste.
Thank you.
All right, that was a public comment. So if you're going to talk during the public hearing, we'll save that for when the public hearing is, so that we can at least have one speaker. So, okay. Okay, so thank you, Celeste. And now, I mean, does anybody have any comments about the public comment I should ask, or?
Can we comment?
Yeah, if you want.
Well, I appreciated her comments and I wondered about our hours and our timing. And I also wondered about holidays too, that I know follow the city's holiday schedule and that kind of thing. But I wondered, what it would take to look at, certain holidays that we could stay open or be open, like Veterans Day or, someplace, and just a whole mix of holidays, right? But that was my add-on to what I was hearing Celeste say, because I think we could potentially consider those things, but there are costs involved, I know.
Yeah.
So I think we'd want to consider that.
I do know one, we're gonna hopefully open at 9 a.m. starting in 2025. On Fridays, because currently they open at 10 a.m., which is kind of annoying because they're open at 9 a.m. the rest of the week. So, but I think it's another point. I had other people comment that the makerspace is only open until 7. And so I think it's something we should look at. And maybe we do an adjustment. I don't know if it'll be in tonight's budget, but we look at it and see if it requires an adjustment. Yeah.
David, what is the approximate cost to keep this library, including the makerspace, open for 2 more hours in an evening?
I have to look it up. So the hour reduction, I mean, I remember going from 8 to 7. I don't remember being up until 9. And that was as a result of budget cuts, but yeah, but, I mean, yeah, the decision was not we weren't as happy about it, but it was as a result of a staff reduction. And we do have the numbers, right? So, but I still appreciate the sentiment because it's not a matter of, so, for perspective, right? We have a lot of people who are coming through the doors at 9 and 10 and 11. I think after 6 PM, I think on average for all the buildings combined, it was fewer than 20 visitors arriving at that time. But now that doesn't speak to Celeste's point, which is just they're here already and they want to stay longer. So I think we'd have to look at it and we'd have to figure out what the cost would be. I don't know that would be significant. We stagger staff as they come in. And so if they're full-time staff who are coming in the afternoon, it just means they come in an hour later or an hour, and I don't know how that would work for lunch break. It's worth looking at.
And there's also safety issues too, right?
Yeah, I mean, the contract for the guards would be one that's where there would be an expense that's yeah, and we never staff any of the buildings with fewer than 2 people at any time, ever. So that we always have at least 2 staff in the building. And this one would obviously require a lot more than 2, but I don't know how many, and we haven't really analyzed it lately. So it's worth looking into. We did look at the thing for opening earlier. And that's something we plan to do on January 2nd.
And I would put on the list, at least looking at a holiday or 2 that we could be open.
Especially during the winter months.
So we bring the holidays to you, and that is your decision to
Yeah.
make about what the holidays are. And I can't remember what time of year that was. We've already approved the 2025 holidays as a board thing, but we could bring them back at whatever date that is, that it's on your calendar, your schedule. And you can look, and we certainly be willing to consider other holidays. We're closed, on average, we're closed an equal number of holidays to all the other libraries in the area. So adding some might mean taking some away. I don't know, but yeah, I think High Plains Library only has about 10 holidays. We have 12, which is pretty common throughout the area. It's usually around 11, 12, 11 and a half. Some people do half a day on the eve of Christmas. We do a full day on the eve of Christmas. So, yeah. But it's certainly within your purview. You're the ones who have to make the decisions. We could,
So what, if the issue is really having groups have space later?
Yeah.
Specific cases of looking. What about looking at maybe Nobo 2 nights a week, staying open? Less expense, less space.
that's possible, yeah.
you know,
I think-
Versus keeping this building open and all the extras that kind of go with that.
I think,
What's the need we're trying to meet?
yeah,
I'm all for encouraging community groups to have space in the evening. But I think it ought to be something we look at in a way that we can control when that availability is to match the demand versus open availability.
yeah,
when-
for 5 buildings or whatever.
There'd be tons of demand for it.
Yeah. Well, how about we put that on the plan to look at next year and,
Yep.
and, in the beginning of the year, and I agree. I mean, there's some synergies with the makerspace on Thursdays and Saturdays when we're open later, and maybe there's some more free time.
The theater's can be open till 11 PM on
Yeah,
Thursdays and Saturdays.
Thursday, did I say it? What did I say?
Yeah, Thursdays. and Saturdays.
Thursdays and Saturdays, so.
And the total number of hours open to the public because of the fact that so the cost isn't similar to 2010 because we've added 2 locations.
Right, yeah,
So, we're adding a second next year and adding Novo. And so those branch libraries didn't have the same hours as Maine. Now all the libraries have exactly the same hours.
yeah,
And so that factored into, I think, the decision to expand it, or to contract it down to 7 was that we were opening all the libraries. And then that changed as well during the pandemic where
right,
lost Reynolds Library for a long time.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, I think
That's worth looking at.
it's worth looking at what the cost difference would be between keeping this library open for 2 hours versus all of them.
We'd love to have your book club back, class. What are you guys reading?
Well, it's an Arabic lit discussion.
Huh.
They're gonna read Arabic books translated into English. Maybe some people will read them in Arabic. It's a senior professor that's doing it.
There's a book called The Minor Detail. I think it was first written in Arabic. Pretty good.
You're
I
recommending
recommend
it?
So
Yep.
it was
Yeah.
written by a,
Recommendation.
yeah, sorry, I have to be in the book club. It's a good book, though. Okay, all right, we're gonna consider. I'll put this on the agenda. The hours thing. I've also had the same question about holidays, especially ones in the winter, when school's out. Where to get, it's good for my kids. Anyway, okay, consider meeting minutes approval for October 15th.
So moved.
Okay. I'll second. All in favor of approving the minutes from October 15th?
Aye.
Any opposed? I see Sylvia also. Can you put her on the screen?
I think the presentation will start.
Oh, okay, after this presentation starts, okay. And then, okay, next is the recommended, the budget. So our first presentation is by Jennifer.
So just as a preamble, you guys have been through this already once before, and so preferably we would have Jennifer do the full presentation. If you have questions, please write them down. We allow the public to speak, and then afterwards, you guys are welcome, whatever questions you may have.
Okay.
So, the first slide here just kind of gives you the lay of the land for the presentation in this budget item, or this agenda item, I'm sorry. So I'll be going over some accomplishments from this year, the budget, and then, if there's board comment, public hearing, and then board discussion, and hopefully, consideration of the resolution to approve the budget. So 2024 so far has been pretty much a whirlwind year for us. We have had the board support to accomplish a great many things towards the master plan goals, as well as the 2022 ballot promises that were made. This slide, the picture here is people enjoying the grand opening of the new North Boulder Library, which opened in July of this summer. We have also been able to expand access to makerspaces. The Noble Library has a new makerspace, Studio 24, as well as we have more programs and more open hours at Building 61, which is here at the main library. We've restored some of the library service hours across the system. We are currently piloting a program in the Canyon Theater where community members can use the theater and have staff support for operating the AV equipment in there, and their use is free of charge. It also is available some evenings during the week. We reopened the main library cafe again this year, but now it's under library management and it is staffed by library staff so that we're able to have a consistent schedule there. And last but certainly not least, we reopened the Carnegie Library for local history after it being closed for several years. So to do all that, we hired more than 70 new employees across the system. In this slide, this is a picture of the outreach program. It looks like they might be passing out books to children, but we've begun implementation of the outreach strategic plan, which is a plan that was co-created by about 40 different community leaders and our outreach and literacy team.
to develop some goals around what the community wants, library outreach to be and how it can serve them. We also have invested more funds in the library materials collection. We've begun addressing the most critical deferred maintenance items on the 3 facilities leased from the city of Boulder. And we're slightly ahead of schedule in that we found a building in Gun Barrel and it's under lease now, and we are working on plans to renovate it. And we're hoping to open that library in the summer of 2025. So lots has happened, but there's still lots more to do. So it's my pleasure to present the staff's recommended 2025 budget. This presentation was given to the board in October, and the board's feedback and direction has been incorporated in this updated presentation. While the 2022 measure to form and fund a library district passed, we understand that some community members didn't agree with the formation of the district and that the resulting property tax increase may be difficult for some folks to bear. Not quite done. We hope that most everyone who resides in the library district will find some benefit and enjoyment for themselves and their families in the library programs and services that will continue and the new ones planned for next year. And now that the district is staffed and has business systems in place, we will take some time next year to ask the community and listen for their input about what they want from their library system in the future. So these are the big picture goals for 2025. We plan to open the Gun Barrel Library. We are going to introduce some new literacy programs and increase our community outreach. We're going to survey the community to learn what it wants from its library system. We're going to continue to improve safety on the grounds and complete more of the deferred maintenance on the 3 facilities that we leased from the city of Boulder. We're going to begin the search for a new Southeast Boulder location for the Meadows Library. The Meadows Library lease, I believe, expires in 2029. Yeah. And then we're looking at plans to do some restoration and renovation at the Carnegie Library facility, and also with the goal of expanding access to the collection. And pictured here is the beautiful Carnegie Library. This picture was taken several years ago, so it looks a little different. Based on those goals, our leadership team developed 4 strategic priorities to guide staff's work and allocate our resources according to the plans, the ballot promises, and the board's priorities. So we're going to continue to do workplace culture building through offering more training and development, collaborative work planning, job performance coaching, leadership development, and a rewards and recognition program. We're going to continue to strengthen and grow community connections through opening the Gun Barrel Library, expanding outreach in the community, and improving convenient access to the library's offerings. We're also going to continue to improve safety and efficiency of the facilities and spaces by addressing deferred maintenance and assessing and improving the management of areas such as the playgrounds, public restrooms, and the main library's underbelly, which is the space right over across the creek from us. We're also going to use data to drive our decision-making to assess and refine new and expanded programs, services, resources, and spaces. So this slide shows the sources for the 2025 operating and capital budget. The largest piece of the pie in black, it represents the property tax revenue, and that's about 79% of our budget, $21.4 million. Going to the left, you see there's $219,000 that is grants and other revenue. There's about $36,000 in grants for our collection in this number, as well as another $125,000 for outreach, maker, and literacy programs from the Boulder Library Foundation. In October, we estimated the interest that we have earned on our investments to be about $500,000. We are anticipating that's going to be closer to $700,000. And so we're asking the board to approve appropriation of the actual balance of the interest income at the end of this year. But for purposes of this presentation, we used the $500,000 number. We're also requesting that $5 million of unspent property tax funds from 2024, so this year, be carried over into next year and be applied to capital and one-time projects. So in total, our budget for next year is $27.1 million. So even after the budget is allocated, the carryover is approved, we will still have some money left this year. So we're anticipating about 3.1, probably a little bit greater than $3.1 million. In addition to that 5 million for carryover to be left at the end of this year. The board also approved 2.5 million in restricted reserves. These are required by state. It's required that we carry 3% of our operating budget. This actually represents 12% of the operating budget. These funds are not to be used for general operations. They're there for emergency purposes. So the total, I guess the low end of the total that we plan to have at the end of this year that is unappropriated, is just in the bank as savings, is $5.6 million. The board has designated that $3.1 million at the top for future capital needs. So you might ask, how do we get to that $3.1 million? How do we know we're going to have that left? In October, I took the fund balance from the balance sheet and deducted the expenses that I anticipate that we'll have from that point till the end of the year. So we anticipate encumbering about $1.5 million for capital expenses. The majority of that money will probably be going to the gun barrel library. As of October, we had 8 more payrolls for the year, totaling about $3.2 million. This assumes that all our vacancies are filled. They never are. We always have some vacant positions, so that number will be slightly lower than 3.2, but that's like worst case scenario. The city of Boulder operated the library system while the district was getting set up. We were appointing board members and getting all our business systems in place. And so we owe it in total, the city of Boulder, for operating the library is $12 million. We have paid one installment of that, and we have another installment that we're going to be paying this month. So we'll be completely paid off. So that's that $6 million there. Then we have $2.4 million in non-personnel expenses. So this is supplies, security services, custodial services, all the kinds of operational non-personnel expenses that we have. And I'm assuming with this number that we're going to spend 100% of what we had budgeted. Probably won't do that as well, so that number could be lower. If you remove the 2.5 million in restricted reserves and the $5 million that we're requesting for carryover, that gets you to the $3.1 million in fund balance.
To be clear, the carryover for 5 million is for deferred maintenance.
Some of it is, yes.
Yeah.
It's not like just a pot of money.
So somebody who looked at the earlier version of the presentation and had asked or pointed out that they thought it looks like the library's budget is dropping from 2024 to 2025. And that's primarily due to the carryover amount. So if you look at the column 2024 adjusted budget, you'll see that $16.5 million circled. That is carryover revenue, property tax revenue from 2023. So like I said, the city of Boulder operated the library system for the district during 2023, so they paid everything. So there were very few costs that the district had to pay directly. And so they had a lot of the revenues left over at the end of that year. So it was carried over. And the $12 million that we owe the city came out of that 16. And then the other 4.5 we have used for capital projects. So if you subtract that 16 million from the total revenue at the bottom of the column under 2024 adjusted budget, $38.6 million, you get the total new revenue number of $22 million at the bottom under the table. Likewise, if you do that same calculation under 2025, you remove the carryover from the 27.1, you get $22.1 million. So our total revenue is pretty much flat. It represents a 0.036% increase in revenue. So our budget hasn't really dropped. It's pretty much stayed the same. So this graph shows how we're going to use those funds, that $27.1 million. The black section is personnel costs. So this is the total personnel costs across the system. It includes benefits and salaries. The rest of the pie represents non-personnel expenses. So personnel is 54% of our budget. And if you go around to the right, IT costs are at $1.4 million, about 5%. Administration is 3% at $755,000. Our literacy outreach programs and events, cafe and marketing non-personnel budget is about $1 million at 4%. Our library materials budget is about 7% at $2 million. We spend $830,000 a year on security guard services, and those are at all our libraries except for Carnegie, because there isn't a need to have security at Carnegie, luckily. And then finally, the facilities and maintenance operating budget is $1.6 million. That's 6% of our budget. That includes things like the custodial contract, the custodial contract, vehicles, any kind of purchases or repairs to the building systems, all that sort of thing, kind of the ongoing costs of running the facilities and maintaining them. Then we plan to spend $4.8 million on capital projects. And you might ask, well, why isn't that number $5 million? Well, the other $200,000 of that $5 million in carryover is actually embedded in some of these other costs, because it's going to one-time projects such as the surveys and some other costs under IT. So 4.8 million is really what we plan to spend on the facilities improvements next year. This graph shows a little bit more breakdown of the personnel costs, that big piece of pie on the last graph. You'll see here that salaries make up 70% of that $14.5 million in personnel costs, and 31% of the rest is benefits. And there is a fairly large slice of the pie labeled other benefits at $1 million. That includes things like our health and lifestyle spending accounts, our life insurance, long-term and short-term disability, eco passes, leave administration, tuition reimbursement, professional development and workers' comp. So kind of a lot of little things in that slice. And if you don't include the capital in the budget, operating budget, this amount, personnel costs amount to 66% of our operating budget. And the reason I didn't count a capital is because it will fluctuate greatly from year to year. As like this year, we got 16 million in our capital and one-time carryover, and next year we're asking for only 5. So it would skew those percentages if we left it in there. This slide shows the breakdown about the salary. So current employees right now, annual salaries amount to $8.8 million. We're requesting to add 18 new positions next year at $911,000. We're recommending a 4% pay increase for standard employees at $312,000. And then we conducted a compensation study this year, as we promised to do, because we basically borrowed the city's payroll structure, and committed to the staff that we would do a full compensation study this year. The results of that are we need to adjust about 12 different employees' pay so that they are paid at market rate. And then we're also going to be doing some promotions in a couple of areas so we can better distribute the duties in those areas. So if this is approved, it will meet the Board of Trustees goals for employee compensation in that we are an employer of choice, and our ability to hire talented people has been great. So I really think we can consider ourselves an employer of choice. And also it meets the goal that the board set of having the median annual compensation for a full-time employee greater than $60,000 a year. If this is put into place, 61% of our staff will be paid above market rate and 39% will be paid at market rate. All that said, there's still potential for some savings because we are going to schedule out the recruitment of the new positions. So we won't have them hired for a full 12 months. So there'll be some salary savings there, as well as when we have turnover, there's a lag time between when the vacancy occurs and when we hire a new person to fill the position. And I'm estimating that's going to be around $700,000. I didn't deduct that from the budget. It's just there as a potential place where cost savings could come. And potentially if we had some other thing we wanted to use the money for, that's a place where we could potentially find it, such as expanding hours. All right. This shows where we're going to add this new staff. So we're adding 4 full-time equivalent positions in internal services. So 1 in finance and 2 in HR and 1 in facilities. 7.5 is being added to public services. That represents your gun barrel team. And then 3.5 FTE is being added to literacy and outreach. This represents a 12% increase in FTE. And we currently have 141 employees. So we'll be adding 18 more to that. All right. So this is one of the areas of new investment for next year. And this just shows what it will cost us to run this new gun barrel library. So there'll be 12 employees supporting this library. 10 of them will be directly working at that library. 2 of them will be one is joining the facilities team and 1 is joining the IT team. And general operating costs are there. Those include our lease, supplies, courier services, custodial services, landscaping, snow removal, all those sort of things that you need to have to operate a branch library. So it will cost just a little over $1 million to run Gun Barrel for a year, which is about 5% of the district's operating budget if you don't include capital. This year, we're beginning to invest in the renovation, purchasing furniture and fixtures and equipment for the library, and we've completed some repairs to the roof and HVAC system in the building. Our budget is between 1.5 and 2.5. We're aiming for the lower end of that. And so that most of that money is going to come out of the 2024 budget. We're also investing in an opening day library materials collection for Gun Barrel, so they'll get all new books. And that's coming out of this year's budget at $225,000. And then we plan to do some advertising and some outreach in the community to find out what they want from their Gun Barrel library, and also, you know, celebrate at the grand opening in the summer. And our budget for that, all of that is $50,000. So it's pretty exciting. The other area of investment is our literacy and outreach department. And you might notice, trustees, that this slide has changed slightly from your packet. And that's because my colleague Juan pointed out that I had the reporting structure a little bit wonky in the original slide. So this is the correct way the reporting structure will go. The literacy and outreach department is growing by 42%. Their budget is increasing. That's primarily due to new staff. The literacy and outreach department manager oversees 3 different areas: volunteer services, outreach, and Boulder Reads. So volunteer services, the new positions are in orange. The volunteer services is receiving 1 FTE of a volunteer program coordinator. Outreach is receiving a 1 FTE of an outreach specialist position. We're adding 0.5 FTE literacy specialist under Boulder Reads to make our current literacy specialist full-time. We're adding a new position called English as a Second Language and Spanish as a Second Language coordinator. And also funding directly a citizenship class instructor who will be a temporary employee because that work only is done for part of the year. So in this picture, you'll see 2 of our librarians, Susanna and Rosina. They have gone to, it looks like a Boulder Housing Partners event for children. And so this is the kind of thing that they're going to be doing more of. The budget for literacy and outreach is comparable to that of running a branch library, as you can see on the left-hand side. The total employee base salaries are about $955,000. They have a small amount for hiring temporary and substitute workers to help do outreach and any kind of programs that they might need help with. They're receiving some grant funds from the Boulder Library Foundation, and then they have general operating costs of about $54,000. So it's comparable to running a branch library, and we kind of consider this as we're taking the library out to the community. The new initiatives that they're planning for next year are system-wide coordination and expansion of outreach. So a lot of our staff do outreach, but now that we have a team, we're going to be more organized and more effective as they're going to coordinate all of those staff members to do outreach. We're planning 2 new multicultural events at the libraries. We're going to be offering English as a second language and Spanish literacy classes, Spanish conversations groups. There's going to be an adult literacy marketing campaign. Let me tell you the name of that. Literacy for All, Opportunities for Life. And we're expanding the children's literacy book programs, adding a reading buddies group at an underserved school, and we're going to also conduct a literacy program impact study. So lots of exciting things happening in that department. And we have an awesome team. So these are the things that we're going to do to begin gathering data to inform our decision making. We're going to do a new patron use and satisfaction survey to update the one that was done in 2018 with our master plan. We're going to also survey or hold focus groups with the Carnegie Library users to learn how they want to use the archive, what they want from the archive. This will inform the board's decision about how to invest in that facility, whether or not to find new spaces or facilities for the archive, that sort of thing. Then we're going to complete 2 impact studies, one in literacy and one in programs and events. These results will set a baseline for us to use to evaluate other programs, and we'll be looking at the positive impacts on program participants in those studies. So the capital budget. In this picture, this is the inside of the Gun Barrel Library being demoed. It was a former bank building. And so they're clearing out all of the old flooring there. We are estimating we'll use about $4.8 million in carryover for capital projects. These projects will address some of the most critical deferred maintenance items that are part of a study that we conducted in 2023 of the 3 buildings that we leased from the city of Boulder. We're going to also use part of this for completing the renovation and furnishing the Gun Barrel Library facility, and also addressing patrons' evolving use of libraries facilities. And their evolving use includes technology as well as spaces. Okay, so digging in a little bit to the deferred maintenance. So main library, this year we've completed some pretty critical repairs. We've managed to address some leaks that we've had for like 15 years, which is pretty cool. It's really cool.
Yeah, you don't know.
So they're sealed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, the waterfall on the stairway out here is gone. So we're gonna turn our focus to some of the short-term projects that were in the facility study we conducted in 2023. And those include cleaning and repair the stone masonry and pavers, replacing windows and seals, repainting metal railings, and replacing flooring. Also going to start chipping away at the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing needs for the main library, and those include replacing various HVAC components and updating the control programming. So in the table at the bottom, you'll see the bright orange or the dark orange stripe. That's short term. That's where the majority of our focus will be, along with the lighter orange and under mechanical and electrical. We won't quite get to that $2.5 million high end of the estimate for those repairs, but we'll get started on it. George Reynolds Library, it's probably the facility that's in the best shape overall. We haven't done a whole lot this year to address the immediate needs. So we'll be focusing on those next year. And those are on the left at the top, removing rust from and sealing doors and frames and addressing a foundation drainage issue in the meeting room. Then we'll start to tackle some of the short-term needs of that facility, which I won't read to you the list, but it's on the right, as well as some of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing needs that that facility has. And lastly, the Carnegie Library. Also, we have completed some repair on roof leaks and interior water damage. We're currently working with an architect to kind of reimagine the layout of the inside of the library, as well as incorporate some of these immediate and short-term needs into that plan. We're going to bring a three-tiered plan for renovating that facility to the board sometime early next year for their consideration. So for next year, we're gonna dig into more of the immediate needs that we haven't completed, start the short-term needs, and also some of the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. So if we were to do all of the deferred maintenance and highlight it in orange on this slide and the previous two slides, it's about $3.7 million. And that's probably a little overly ambitious, given that we're planning to open the Gun Barrel Library. We're planning to reorganize or remodel the second floor nonfiction area here at the main library. And we're going to be doing some, some renovations at the Carnegie Library. So we'll see how far we can get. And that concludes my presentation. I don't know if the board has any questions. If not, then we can open the public hearing.
Okay, we're gonna open the public hearing. I don't think we need to make a motion or anything, do we, Kim? Just, okay.
You don't.
Just declare the public meeting hearing open. So our first speaker is Adrian Chernoff.
Yes,
Okay, you go ahead.
sit here, stand up.
You get 3 minutes. You're fine where you're at.
My name's Adrian Chernoff. I am a Boulder-based ed tech literacy startup here. We create stories at 11 different reading levels, K through 5. We can support up to middle school and high school. We support English language learning, Spanish. We have digital assets. I've spoken to about 40 teachers and superintendents who are doing it's revolutionary in the space for advancing literacy for students. So the reason why I share this with you is I would like to know who to talk to because literacy is such a major thing.
Right behind you.
And then the other thing, which is, as we're building this out, I want to create a partnership. I'm doing with CU and also with St. Vrain and others and other superintendents. So I feel like this would be a great place to activate. You spend a lot of money on Canopy and some other tools out there. I think we'd be a lot more affordable and have for a lot more features and functionality. So I just wanted to share because this is a big problem. And I'd love to just see if I can help.
Awesome. Thank you. Did you bring a business card?
Yep, I can.
Yeah. Juan, do you have one?
Yep. That was a minute. So-
Could you say more about your program? Can I ask you that question?
Sure. So it's called OG. So what we do is we use artificial intelligence to create all the assets. And then we actually provide different leveling systems for each individual reader. So they actually engage in the right reading content. And as we do assessments in real time with them reading, we're able to re-level them up and down. So they're actually reading at the right level. And we're challenging and going up and down. So it actually helps, basically an automation tool actually help them in reading and advancing the reading. And also ties to science of reading because the output, if they're doing a verbal reading out loud, we can analyze how they're reading and identify how they can get help in science of reading aspects.
Are you working with any school districts right now?
No, not yet. Yeah, that's just part of the outreach and trying to connect the schools and the community and the libraries.
And are you based here in Boulder?
Yes. Yeah, yeah, I've been in the Noble Library with my daughter. My daughter is, she's a kindergartner reading the first grade now. She reads the fifth grade reading level. But she's lucky, but most kids just don't have the ability to read. And also I'd like to share that for an affordability price point, I think if we were to do something like the $10 a year per user for unlimited usage, I think that probably revolutionary pricing as well.
Great.
Thank you.
Awesome. Okay. Anyone else? Would you like to speak for public comment? I know you came in late.
Came to see what's up.
Okay, cool. You're welcome to, this is our public hearing for our budget. So, if I don't have any more speakers,
Doug,
okay,
I just want to offer my congratulations to the staff here at the library and to the board. You all are being excellent stewards of a big bet that the community placed on this library. It's so inspiring. It's funny to say a budget's inspiring, but it really is. When you think about the investments that you're making and just the rapid clip that you're pursuing, not only the branch expansion and the much deferred, boring but necessary deferred maintenance, but the fact that you're really thinking about your outreach and literacy expansion as a whole other branch that lives in the community. I just think that it's worth noting that this may be the most transformational budget in certainly a generation for this library system. And you're doing the community proud, and the Library Foundation is certainly a proud partner with you.
Thank you.
thank you. Yeah, we only have the voters to thank for that, and the taxpayers, so, and the staff. So, of course,
Most is done.
the voters first to give us the money.
Yes.
So, all right, well, I'm gonna close public comment. Or public hearing. And,
So I had some questions.
Yeah.
That I maybe just wanted to ask about. I wondered about citizen class instructor and wondered about if there are other districts, like who else does this in the area? And then is there some federal funding that could be attached to this in some way, or have we ever pursued anything like that?
Know about the federal funding, but that's something we should look into. The citizenship classes have gone on here for a long time, and but the actual person, the foundation gave grant money to Intercambio, who then paid and had that person on as a temporary employee. So the relationship with Intercambio has been done for the past couple of years, and the person who does the citizenship classes or leads the citizenship classes is a long time, was previously a library employee, and she's been doing citizenship classes now, I think, for almost 20 years.
Yeah.
And so she's here, and it was a logical choice. I think it was one of your proposals too, was it want to bring her on in-house as a temporary employee, so that the program would have a home. Because it had been Intercambio, but then we did all the events here, all the classes were here, but it was under the
Yeah.
auspices of Intercambio. I don't know of other organizations that do in the area.
Intercambio,
Aside from.
No, the citizen, they do citizen classes?
but they have to pay. There is a fee for the class, and it's online. Ours is in person.
And there's no fee.
There is no fee. Yeah.
No fee.
All,
Yeah. I'm just sensitive to this issue, as we would all know in this world that we're in right now. I'm just wondering how to be careful about that, but also to see if there's some quick funding in 2024 we could get for this.
about the funding from government.
Mhm.
Once I was sent an information about government funding for citizenship classes, but those grants are hundreds of thousands of dollars that our program is not big enough to absorb. I showed that grant to Chris, and he was the one who told me this is too big for you to work with the government grants.
I see.
One other things, many of may or may not be of interest, but all federal grants require a heavy load of reporting. We do not report I think even anybody's interest in taking citizenship classes and don't record that data for a period of time where it could be corrable or
Yeah.
available from a subpoena. That was a decision we made. Almost a decade ago, I think. So we don't store any of that data.
I understand. Okay. Yeah, it's important efforts here. I just wanted to sort of see what we might be thinking about. My other little question, really minor question, has to do with eco passes. Like, are those still like, I mean, are people using them?
Sure.
Are they? Okay, like I just don't have an awareness.
I use mine all the time.
Okay, well, I'm glad. Good for you all.
The one benefit of the trustees, you get to have dinner when we have dinner and then the Eco Pass.
And it's fairly low cost.
Okay,
to Issue those.
I can't remember exactly, but it's a ridiculously low price that they are available to us as a group membership.
Okay. I just know of the issues of RTD and all that stuff, and I just hadn't heard anybody talk about using their Eco Pass in a while. Yeah. The buses were running. I guess they are. Thank you. That's it.
I had a quick question about the grant budget. And this relates to the foundation as well. I know right now the current budget as proposed has 125 grand coming in from the foundation. The budget the foundation just passed on their side has 250 grand going to the library at some point next year. Is this just something we would adjust if you make proposals for that extra money?
Your all's budget, I think, is approved in March. The allocation to the library is approved in March.
I think by February, yeah, we have a new schedule agreement with you all. And so that's right, Andy. So we have made room in the budget for just about 250,000 rather than 125. And then, of course, there's some designated funds and endowments too that it's up to the purview of the library to pull from, up to 5%, in one case up to the whole balance for some Carnegie support. And so there, potentially is 300,000 to 400,000 all in next year coming from the foundation into the library district. You could call the 125 a minimum, very safe, conservative estimate that the foundation hopes to double or more.
No, that's fine. I just want to make sure we weren't precluding additional asks for money down the road.
Chris, I don't know if you said at the beginning of your talk, can you just explain real quick for the public, the relationship of the Library Foundation? And just real quick, so that people understand that why we're so congenial. Yeah.
Okay.
I think that might be.
Sure. I talk about the Boulder Library Foundation as the philanthropic arm of the Boulder Public Library District. We are an independent nonprofit, but we are a supporting organization whose one and only cause is the library. And so this is our 50th year. And over that period of time, we have granted $10 million to the Boulder Public Library. And our role is shifting and growing as you shift and grow. I think that in a nutshell, what we are moving towards as we scale with you is also a shift in focus towards the core of your mission, connecting people and ideas to transform lives and improve the community. So over time, we've done a little bit of everything. I think in the future, what you'll see us doing more and more of is supporting the kind of work that donors in our community get excited about because it serves the literacy mission of the library.
Great. Thank you. We wouldn't be here without the Library Foundation, so I wanted to give your.
Oh, and we've been 100% behind both times in the last 50 years that the library has gone to the bank for funding.
Yeah. Okay. Any more questions or comments? Yes.
I don't know if this is the right time for it, but David, you were gonna explore with the city's come up with a better solution for underneath the building.
Still talking about it. So
That's not in any of the,
no,
the construction costs.
areas outside. So they are called out in the potential for capital expense. The city is working on the civic area master, redoing the civic plan, which is planned for construction in 2026. They have begun the public process. We've seen SketchUps. So we've been, Jennifer and I have been at the table So they are drawing up plans, I mean, and heard us loud and clear about the areas that we had major concern. And so they are being incorporated into the plan. We'll see what actually happens. The issue with the city, as we experienced when we were members of the city, is there always seems to be money for capital expense. There rarely seems money for operational. And so the idea that they would do some improvements in the civic area, you know, my advocacy is really for them to have better funding for taking care of what they have. So really, what we need is maintenance and for the last month and a half, thanks to everyone who spent time and talked to councilors and talking to city manager and people like that, we've seen vast improvements over the last 2 months. That's as a result of a lot of people, the safe team, the police department.
Thanks.
Thank you, James.
Yeah.
I have a comment, if I may.
Okay.
Yeah, so I want to call back attention to, we had a couple of public comments. Thank you very much for coming. And one was about extending the hours, right? And so I think it's important. I mean, it sounds easy to do. And I think, and when I think we want to look into it. You know, I want to go back to some of the things we talked about at the retreat. So, you know, we saw the library has seen a decline in public usage since the pandemic. That was preceded nationally by a trend beginning in 2012, where a decline in public library use during the hours that they were open was on in some municipal areas on a precipitous slope. And then really kind of caught up in the Front Range. All the libraries around us experienced that. While we were seeing growth, most of them were seeing declining numbers in terms of people coming in. Now, circulation numbers keep going up month after month and year after year. And that's because, from our budget, a third of the circulation now is through digital materials. The people who actually use the library on a regular basis, not your mom, who actually comes to the library and looks for books. The people who come to the library to look for books is not a predominant activity. Whereas if you would have asked me 20 years ago, more people came to the library to browse the shelves to find a book than did it online. But we're living in a different world, right? People go online and they search for books there, they reserve it, and they come in and use the hold system. And now that makes up about a third of all of our physical use. So those are people who park their car quickly or illegally, come running into the library, grab their book off the hold shelf and leave, and they don't actually stay here. That may have something to do with our parking, but the numbers are up throughout, right? So the outreach plan is not new, right? You were on the board before with Celeste when it was in the master plan in 2007. It never received funding. It repeated in the master plan in 2018. It never got funding. Last year, we launched a program in earnest. This year, we're nearly doubling that program. That is 7, 8, 10,000 people who do not have the time or the funding, the resources to come to the library. And we have made the decision to build a branch to go to this. The impact of that, I don't know how many people Susanna talked to this summer. She was here, she's been here for 6 months. Over the summer, she probably met with 2,000 different people.
The amount of last year.
Yeah, and so, there's a lot of bang for the buck in investing our resources in looking outside of our 4 walls of ways to improve the library for the public. And I get it that there are groups that want to stay till later, and I certainly will take seriously and look into those numbers, but I want you to think long and hard about where the money would be best invested. Is it best to have 3 people at Novo 4 nights a week for a couple of hours, or 12 people here for a couple of hours, and the cost that would entail for a few number of people who want to stay in the library? Or are we better off investing resources in people who are willing to go out into the community, go into the manufactured home community, go into Boulder housing partner sites, go into schools, and talk to people about literacy and the advantages that the opportunities for life that are available to them through a program. I think that's an important consideration.
Actually, David, one of our partners, Boulder Housing Partners, gave to the library a recognition for all the summer programs that we have with the kids. So that was a big success, and they gave to the library a recognition for this.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So we have 2 examples. Last Thursday, Susana and Cristina, they went to what is Primos Immigration Fair, something like that. It was-
Resources for Immigration Fair.
Thank you. And it was like at the closing hours for the library, but at that event, there were like 200 people,
Between 150.
150 people. And at this moment, Christina is on an event in BBSD.
Yes,
BBSD, so
with the family liaisons.
and those are examples that the library can be present in this type of event, extra hours covering a lot of people. Oh, we just had the Children Book Festival, 300 people last weekend, and these are the kind of strategically where the staff can put their hours, and we have a bigger impact.
So have you ever thought about a bookmobile as part of that?
We have, but not currently. It's not in your budget. But yeah, certainly we've thought of a bookmobile.
But there might be extra.
No. All right.
I just had a quick thing, although to your point, I would love to test later hours for the makerspace. See, that'd be my 2 cents. Jennifer, you had the information about the, I guess, the external pay comparison and where we compare with the market. There was reference in the packet to an internal pay equity survey that's not ready yet, but expected this month.
Yes.
And then would those adjustments come then if they were recommended in 2026? Okay.
I don't imagine that they're gonna be substantive because of where we sit, and most of our staff being above market already.
Yeah, I just think of it as like, well, we're doing similar jobs and I'm getting less or something like that,
So we may be able to absorb it in next year's budget.
Okay. Any more comments?
It's really good work. I know so much work goes into this.
It's amazing. I sent it to Johnny and she was very happy to see it. As our former president, so, or chair. Okay, so now we're going to make there is a resolution on page
17.
17.
Yes.
Okay. This will approve the mill levy.
21, I think.
Yeah, sorry. It's actually 24.
Ah. Sorry about that.
21. Well, the resolution's on 20.
Okay, yes, 24. 24 and 25.
It's on 21 on this one.
Okay, so we just, can we just say we move to adopt the resolution?
Yes.
Approving the budget and certifying the mill levy?
Yes.
I'll also move.
Can we first, for the record, state what the certification of the mill levy is?
The certification would be approved, okay, in section 3, the foregoing budget indicates that the amount of money necessary to the budget of the general fund for operating expenses from property tax revenue for the purposes of the meeting all general operating expenses of the district during 2025 budget year, the voters approved a tax level of 3.5 mils upon each dollar of the total valuation of assessment within the district for the year 2025.
Beautiful.
And then section 4 is the certification to the county commission.
I just wanted for the record to
Yes,
be
thank you.
I
verbalized.
think it has to be.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Sam. You've done this before.
You have to read it, yeah.
So, and we are approving the budget as presented in the budget memo. But I think the most important part, yeah. Okay, so I still move. Oh, go ahead, Sylvia.
I'm just trying to find it in my packet and I'm not finding it right up front, but I think there was one page where I'm listed along with the other officers and I think I need to be removed from that page.
Sylvia, we sent over a signature page.
Okay,
And when that's signed, we'll go ahead and fill in all the blanks and we'll take care of those issues before we file it.
sounds good. Thanks.
So
Okay.
you made a motion. I'm seconding the
Yeah, all
motion.
right. Yeah, I motioned for this and you second the motion to approve the
Yep.
budget. And the mill levy, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, the budget passes. Thank you. Yay.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you all very much. This was I'm very proud of this budget. Proud mostly of the work that Jennifer did. I love the fact that, I think it's clear. I mean, I hope you all think it's really clear. We're getting to make it really, really clear, but I love the fact that, that we're showing our work, right? Like, so all the different tables that you look at, like it may be confusing to the novice, but I think each one is intended to strike a different chord and present the budget in a lot of different ways. And it kind of shows like the page, which I saw everybody's eyes glazing over where Jennifer is explaining how he came up with $3.1 million that's there in savings. But, it is kind of critical for, a small governmental organization, I think, to explain how we arrived at the point that we arrived, but without just like saying, here's the number.
Totally, yeah.
It was important. Our eyes did not glaze over.
All right, good.
It's just I've gone through it times.
Yeah. In any case, appreciate it. And yeah, you should expect to see big work. Thanks very much for coming tonight too, present here to us.
We're gonna keep going, so you're welcome to stay. We're gonna go over the capital improvement plan, if you're welcome to stay through, and then we're gonna
That'd be great.
director updates and, oh, did we skip? We got, yeah.
Made it sound so interesting, it's like.
It is actually pretty interesting and, only because we have to plan for the maintenance of all the buildings and IT systems and all that stuff, so I go into the library. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Very much for coming.
No, thank you.
Thanks.
You.
Good night.
And it's also like light years ahead of where we were last year. Yeah.
Yes. It makes sense this year. Do you need anything this year first?
All right, you ready?
Yes, I'm ready.
All right, please proceed.
Trustee Hamilton asked if I could put together a capital improvement program for you all, kind of modeled on what the city provides. They have an interactive website with their CIP. I don't have those skills or talents. So I tried to create a document that mirrors what they have available online.
Can I explain why I asked it, just so you,
Yeah, please do.
just for the board, as we're doing the budget every year, we have so much money, right? X amount of money. Whatever we're spending on the buildings, it'd be nice to plan for that in the future. I'm looking at Sam and he'll be here, but unless you decide to do it.
I mean, I think it's important to the public.
Yeah, so, how much do we have to spend on people and books and all that stuff is reduced by whatever we're spending on the buildings. And so, we need to, just be able to plan for that in the future if we need to save money or, whatever, spend now or whatever. If we have a high inflation, maybe we spend it all now, so anyway. So that's just, the amount of money we need to set aside to maintain the buildings. Okay,
I didn't really have a presentation plan.
okay, you can just talk it through and,
Basically, what I included the policy information that kind of backs this up around asset management. Included information about assumptions and how the capital budget works, where the money comes from. I pulled some of the principles out of our planning documents. There's a section that focuses on what we plan to do in the next few years. I attempted to categorize some of the different capital costs we have. And that's if you have a different way you'd like it presented, I'm open to doing whatever. This is just what I could come up with. I also included the library collection, which libraries do treat as capital asset. So that's the physical collections, the books and the media. Our electronic resources do not count as capital. And included some of the goals that we have around that, so we can kind of gauge how we're doing. And then just a brief overview of our different facilities. And then provided you some tables and graphs to kind of show in pictures the annual investment on page 39 across over the years, what we have planned for each facility. And these are kind of movable numbers, if you will. There may be things that come up that we have to tackle that we might have planned in an out year. And so we just shift the funds around, or we'd make some different decisions. We won't be doing all of the work in any given year all at once, so there'll be opportunities to move things around if we need to. And then I broke it out by facility over the next 10 years. And equipment is also another area of capital assets. So our computers, a lot of our like our materials handling systems, some of the makerspace equipment, those are considered capital assets. And so I plugged in our current replacement schedule. Again, a lot of these numbers are really rough estimates.
Do you think it's gonna cost 800,000 every 2 years to replace computers?
Well, that's what we spent.
Is that what we spent the first time?
767,000
Okay,
first year, so. May not be because desktop and laptop computers are in a slightly different cycle. I think
Right.
desktops the last 5 years.
yeah,
Replace laptops every 3 years, but we have more laptops, I think, than
Right.
new desktops. So,
pretty standard.
as the years progress, each year we'll get closer numbers, for the budget.
Okay,
This is just sort of an order of magnitude estimate.
got it.
And I also, used my limited knowledge of facilities and tried to map out where immediate, short-term and long-term things in the Cummings report belonged on this. I had our facilities manager look at next year's plans. He said those make sense and they're certainly doable. But like I said, if something breaks that we had planned to replace in 2027, we might have to move things around and do something different.
I think this is really helpful in my view. I mean, this is kind of a rough outline and I think it's gonna be a work in progress, but we just kind of need it as a conceptually to understand what's that piece of the pie gonna be every year. And if it's gonna balloon one year or shrink one other, it's kind of a living document, I think,
Really what we're looking for is averages, right? Like,
Yeah.
you come up with an average time, and that's really, so we don't want to lock in a bunch of operational cost in terms of staffing and or other things. We have a known amount of money that we have to spend on capital. Okay?
Yeah.
This is heavily front-loaded to address the backlog.
Right.
More aggressive than, I mean, I don't know. I think we should try to do the best we can, but it's also like, we don't know yet what our capacity is. A lot of the carryover that we have this year is because we put money in for capital and we couldn't actually get around spending it. I mean, the staff literally just started this year, some of them 5 or 6 months ago, but we're working at it as fast as we can. And this seems like a heavily aggressive schedule for addressing the backlog. But as you know, if you're homeowners, I don't know what the age of your house is, but things break. And it's just like a never ending cycle. I don't know. It's probably an illusion that we catch up because other things will, in old buildings. Remember, average age with Novo is now something like 52 years old, our buildings. It's really more. It would be 100 years.
Well, even Novo is having issues. I mean, like, there's things that they need to come and fix in there. So, and like, for a brand new building, you're like, oh God. Why is it broken? But, anyway. No, I think just from a conceptual standpoint is what we need it for and, you know, maybe you can move things around in one year when you're fat or when you're lean, you know, it just helps.
I did have a question about funding for those, and I think this is very helpful, so thank you for laying it out. But, you know, we just approved a budget that had 5 million in carryover, which roughly corresponds to the 5 million in capital we're doing next year. We have 3.1 million set aside in the future. But, you know, if we spend everything next year, there's no additional carryover beyond that 3.1 million, plus some interest earnings perhaps. So where ultimately does this capital money come from once we burn through that 3.1 million?
Yeah, so there will be carryover. So we will be looking at a budget with, because of that first year, the 2023, where we saw so much, right? So to city, but there is going to be, after moving the city's amount, the carryover is remarkably the same. And so there will be carryover year after year, especially in these years as we're ramping up, right? So we're way ahead of schedule in terms of all of the things we're going to do. We're still lagging in terms of being able to bring staff on board. So that's where you're seeing also savings. So probably until we get past 2027, I think, you're going to see carryover almost in each budget. But at some point, hopefully, let's say 2028, 2029, you will see a budget where the budget itself matches more or less the revenue that's coming in. So we anticipate, you know, the state, there may be new tax measures in the future, but as it is right now, we're anticipating about a 5% increase in revenue, not in 2025, but in 2026 and 27. It could be higher than 5.5%. We don't know, right? And then there's also growth, right? So the city council in 2 days is talking about Area 3 development, right? That's probably 10, 20 years out, but that is a massive amount of growth that is unaccounted for in our revenue sources, right? So growth, you know, you look at it from year to year and we're just beginning, and you hear that growth in Boulder is like 1%. They're talking about the population. They're not talking about growth in property assets. So I don't know about you, but every neighborhood I go into, they're tearing down some house from the 1950s and building a $3 million square foot home. And that increases, that's growth, right? That is growth in terms of the asset value that Sam mentioned before the meeting, the largest commercial real estate sale in the state of Colorado, occurred in Colorado a couple years ago. The hotels are being built. We're not accounting for those in that 5%. The 5% does not account for growth. So what is growth? We don't know yet. We're thinking 1 or 2%. Maybe it's higher than that some years. Certainly if Area 3 came online, it would be vastly higher than that. And so it balances out, right? And actually, even according to this and balancing out over the course of 15, 20 years, we have money in the bank by the time we get to the end of year 15, 16, in order to consider then maybe the Reynolds Library for a major renovation. Even though that building is, as Jennifer pointed out, it's in the best shape of all of our buildings. It graded out the best from an energy consumption point of view, from almost every lens you could take. That building was also built in 1968. It has fewer windows, made out of brick. It's got some advantages. So, but it is, you know, well past its 50-year imagined horizon. And so
But the carryover in next year's budget is basically dependent upon us underspending the budget we just approved. I mean, hiring roles, you know, obviously you're not going to hire every new role right away. And there's some stuff that we know is going to carry over, but it's probably like, we're not looking at 3.1 million of net new carryover
assuming
in the next budget.
Go down, depending upon what happens with revenue. Right? So
Well,
what happens with revenue in 2026? We don't know.
I think this is the key to this piece. This is why I asked for this, because of what you're just asking, because we're going to get an increase. Well, most likely in 2026, when they reassess everyone's property, the revenue for the library will go up. Okay. We're pretty much at staff levels. Like, I don't see us adding, I mean, in my mind, we'd have to have a good justification, but like, unless we add another branch or something like that, we're pretty much at the staff levels that we're going to be at. Onesie twosies, maybe over the years or whatever, you know, but but we're not opening new branches or new programs unless the surveys come back, and then we're gonna realign. So basically what I see is your staff level, having a inflation amount in wages and the benefits and that. And then you're gonna have a little bit of rise in your property taxes. And then whatever's left over between staff and IT resources is what you can spend on capital. And that's why this is important.
Right.
So
right.
that those numbers match.
Yeah, I agree.
And then we have the,
I think it is going to be interesting to see if we actually hit these numbers. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right. There's some unpredictions in here, but
Yeah, and
if we say 5% growth or 2% growth plus 5% property value increase, 6 or 7%, subtract 3% for inflation, sort of 4%. That's a little over $1 million a year of our budget. So that's $1 million a year plus say $500,000 a year and carryover from not hiring stuff as quickly. Now we're at 1.5 million. That doesn't sustain this for that period of time.
Well, the projections, well, I think it does, Andy. It may not in the short run, but in the long run, using, roughly 3% in non-personnel costs, roughly 3.5 to 4. So we have seen 4% increase in salary, which is a large chunk of our budget, those 2 years. That's not going to be something that we look at every single year. That was more or less to catch up with inflation, but yeah, the balance, assuming roughly less than 5.5% increase in that every 2-year property appraisals, I think if we come in quite well.
it was until like 2039
Yeah, I remember the
Where-
projection.
yeah.
I'm just trying to reconcile the projections with
with these
the numbers
yeah.
on this page.
But I think so much of this, at least in my mind, a lot of it's carryover money that is getting expended in the time. And so you're not seeing the actual revenues coming in and how much gets carried over, but you're just seeing the expenditure line. And it doesn't match. By the time we get to 2028, the budget won't be 22 million. It'll probably be more like 24-25 million dollars a year. And the budget itself will more or less mirror it, right? It's about accounting for the annual average amount of money going into capital expenses. And if we complete Meadows in the next 3 years, as was your stated desire at the retreat, it's all just fixing stuff. There is not another new thing, not a bookmobile, not another library anywhere on the horizon in that period to 2039. But the balance of our budget would position us for in 2039, making that decision. So Fifth Street, whatever it would be, that would be an area of actually
Oh, yeah. that's-
significantly more people to
Oh,
warrant
I wanted to mention
a
that.
new library.
yeah, that one. Okay.
So just a couple of things related to what we're talking about here. One, I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, you go ahead, Sylvie.
Oh, sorry, you interrupted me. I
No,
lost my flow here. So, I was just thinking about growth and housing developments, and I've talked to David about this, but the city's going through, city and county and planning board entities are going through the comp plan process, or they're beginning that process. And they had an open house event last month at the dairy, and I attended that, and I encouraged the planning staff to not forget the library district and to make sure that we were involved as a stakeholder in, their community meetings in that process, and not as one of the random citizens that might be involved through the citizen assembly process that they're going to use for that. But it's important that we know and understand what this future development is and growth is wherever it is. But and I hadn't been thinking about just valuation aspects of market rate housing versus affordable housing units and how that will impact us, in time, right? And Alpine Balsam is an example. So that's the old BCH site. And I was involved with a group that encouraged the city to purchase that. And we thought 10 years ago that would be built into something by now. And that's not the case. But apparently the city's having a the council's having some hearing related to the development, and they've now upped the number of market rate housing units on that site to like 35 or something like that, which is really very surprising to hear, because originally it was supposed to be workforce housing sort of oriented, but also offices of the city, relocated in that site. So just kind of surprised by that, but I also think that, that has an impact on our growth too, and what we will see in the future. But I just think that, what you're talking about is there's so many variables, right? And it's going to be interesting to see over time.
The city has I think very noble goals around affordable housing. They never quite play out as the manner in which they imagine it. And that's not a matter of lack of will. It's really just how you're going to pay for it, right? And so ultimately, developers make a lot of those decisions, and it's the market rate housing that winds up helping them offset the cost of building.
Yep. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, I lived across from Area 3 since 92 and seen many a proposal come and go. And so I think it'll happen eventually, and thank you for this. It's really helpful to me. The things in I guess, the medium-term horizon that are most concerning to me are these, how much money to put into Carnegie, and what is our timeline for finding a new new Meadows branch? Because, when I look at $1 million, $1.6 million into a building that I think must be preserved for a community use, I don't know though that our community use, yeah.
And we heard you loud and clear. So we will
Yeah.
be back in the first quarter. So we will present to you two solid costs and a third cost, which I think is going to be a little bit more speculative even in the first quarter. But what's the cost to fix it? Fix all the shit that's broken. What's the cost to make it work? And that's it's less than $1 million. And there may be some adjustments that we may need to do. And there are some that the cost, I think it will be, if it makes it as far as you just ask the same question I'm going to be asking is, why would we do this? We're not an archive. And so those questions would be legit questions to have an answer. We set out about after the retreat to get some bids on those costs. And so we're out there now. We'll bring them to you in the first quarter. We won't begin anything until you guys.
And so my other question would be, is it realistic to consider including history, genealogy, whatever part of a New Meadows branch, where what lives at Carnegie now could live in 21st century conditions and better serve the community? Yeah.
Yeah, so the thinking it would be that we don't know that we'll be able to acquire anything or even lease anything in the Meadows area. We need to stay roughly within that wheelhouse.
Right.
There's the possibility that the whole Safeway closes and the mall opens up, right? And that may be a great opportunity for us, which has a unlimited amount of space for a lot of different options and is a good location. But that may not materialize either. And so we will, the plan, there's fix it, there's how to make it work for now. And then there's third, right? The third option is not necessarily to keep the archive in that space. How can we make that building functional for the public, where the archive lives somewhere else? And then the other plan, which I think I heard fairly, not by consensus, but by some level of consistency, that ideally, the Carnegie Library would not only have a great archive and room to expand, but parking and relatively straightforward off the street access. And so the parking and the right off the street access are not solutions we're ever going to be able to address on the Carnegie site where it is currently. And so those are major complications. And we can speculate what the cost would be to make it happen, but you can't exactly double. You can't. We're not going to ask an architect to decide how to double the footprint and put an underground parking garage there. Right. Like that's not going to be something you're going to see. We could speculate on what that cost might be, even price it out, but I don't think that's going to be a direction that we go. And we have to have parking, we have to have
Yeah.
direct from the street or sidewalk or lot
Mhm.
entry.
I have another thought, which is that I would hope that you would be sharing this document with city. And let them know, but I also wondered about our timing or strategy in nudging the city on turning over the assets to the district. You know, if just given these, you know,
I
do
think
we
it's a
want to
good
bring that up
question.
again this year
I think
or
it-
wait patiently?
I'd like to see what comes back on the Carnegie. This is my opinion, and just see where that is, and sort of. I think one of the things is we got a lot to digest. This, we've done a lot, and we still have the gun barrel, and this is our first major budget. So and we hired a bunch of staff, and so I think, in my view, just from a bandwidth standpoint of ourselves and of staff, I think the buildings are important. We're going to invest in them, but we kind of need to develop that why. And I think when we get the like why give them to us, you see what I'm saying?
Mhm.
And so this is my view, is that like maybe we wait until we get the stuff back on Carnegie, and we'll probably meet with them again in September. Might be a good time to bring it up. Maybe not at that meeting, but circulate it before then and see what they say. But let's have a good justification. Next year is a council election. The next 2 years are a council election. I doubt this will be an election issue, but people are going to be more wary about it. But I think there would be support there. The one person that was very vocal will be not on council.
Yeah.
So,
You're right that it was a political issue, right? So if you remember, the city of Boulder's staff recommendation was that all the buildings be deeded to the district. That's a political decision. And one that was not even unanimous, but there was some great deal of compromise that happened there.
well,
That they maintain the assets. I think Kim would know, but the IGA stipulates that we would revisit it in 2027.
Yeah.
Sure. We could revisit it sooner, but I should imagine, like with most political decisions, it will take you probably at least a couple of years of negotiating to understand why.
Yep.
'Cause now that we've assumed all of the maintenance and operations of all those buildings and all the costs associated with them, I think you are gonna have to probably go back and say, we spent this amount of money fixing up the buildings that you loosely maintain, and we feel that there's a need for us to have whatever benefit would accrue to us as having these buildings for the library and the
Yep.
community, rather than the city holding them as an asset to gain half a basis point on a 20-year, 50-year bond, right? Like, which is how they use it now, they use them as collateral.
well, so yeah, 3 of the council members will be one is off, 2 are off, and 1 more will be off in 2020 by the end of next year. So.
Right, and there are new people, coming on, but I would just encourage us to use this, to share that and to, make
Yeah.
the point
For sure.
that we're investing in assets that we.
I think what they wanted to see, or at least verbally what they said, their position was they wanted to see that we could take care of the buildings.
Yep.
So that was what they said.
Yeah, let's just not wait till 2027 to do that. Let's just keep a track record of what we've shared with them and document it.
That was probably an optimal leverage point where we've shown that we're taking care of them, but we're not going to put more money into them until they transfer it.
Right.
And I'm sure Carnegie is going to become a potential leverage point here as well.
Okay. That concludes this portion of the draft capital plan, and now it's the director's update.
Yeah, so a number of things, several I need some decisions on. So in your packet is the procurement contract for a sole source for the automated materials handling system. Linkso is the automated materials handling system, and some of you have been in the basement. I don't know if you all have, in some of the back rooms of some of the libraries. So it is it's an integrated system that saves a ton of touches and saves a ton of staff time for us. So it's our recommendation that you approve of a $240,000 sole source contract with Linkso in order for us to buy the sorter that would operate the gun barrel, operate in the gun barrel. I'm happy to take any questions you may have on that.
On the sorting system, you mentioned it's the same system that's in use in Maine Meadows and George Reynolds, Nobo as well, or is Nobo something
Oh,
different?
yeah,
Yeah, no, but
I forgot.
yeah.
No, well,
Just wondering if we had one
Yeah,
outlier.
it's also brand new. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yep, that's my only question. So it's this, literally we're buying the same thing that's in use for this.
Yep.
Any other comments about that? I think we need to move to so I included the purchasing policy. The exemption for sole source is under 5B. That was what we approved in the finance policy. They wrote the sole source justification letter. And the motion would be to approve the purchase of the Linkso system for the gun barrel sorter for $240,000 plus.
231,730.
What was it?
231,731.
231,731.
Are you making a motion?
I'm making a motion to approve the sole source purchase of the Lango system. Okay, all in favor?
Great, thank you very much. And so what you also see in your packet is the total compensation philosophy, and I think there was a question, but this was a part of the initial establishment of the district when we had gone through the there was a employee liaison working group, an HR working group, and in the context of bringing all the staff over, we adopted the city's salary structure. And so as a component of that first class and compensation study that we did, one of the things that we were looking at was putting together a total compensation philosophy, which was highly recommended that we do that. And I'm very satisfied with this one. The many of them you see, there's a lot of hyperbole and a lot of wishful thinking. I think we are hitting on it with this one. So I feel pretty sound. We didn't want any made up language and dreamy stuff when we're dealing with people's salary. So this was something that we had just promised, and so we're bringing it forward to you for your to look. See, Doug asked me like, what's it even there for? It's kind of just to give a broad statement to both employees, prospective employees, and then also the public. Like, so it's not. Know that there are a lot of people that say that our median wage is $50,000 a year. I think we're like maybe among 4 or 5 libraries in the state that can say that. So that's something to be proud of. So kind of just the statement, the full self saying what we're trying to achieve with staffing. The next thing is the highlights from the staff benefits survey that we did in 2025. Not a whole bunch of takeaways other than the fact that, we had invested quite
Last month.
Yeah, it was
2025.
Yeah, and so it was, it's there was a hope, I think, when we invested in Foundation Health, the clinic, at a relatively high cost per employee and dependent, that it would have some direct benefit, because when you go to the clinic, you don't necessarily directly report that. That's not reported to Cigna, and it may bring our premiums down. And maybe it did a little bit, but it's not evident in any case that it did. And so we're gonna have to take a long, hard look at that. I mean, Foundation Health Clinic is one that is focused on preventative type medicine and taking care. And you see that our numbers for that and interest in that is quite low below average. And so we will have to increase the incentive and interest in seeing if people will use that Foundation Health Clinic more, I think, in the coming years in order to justify its expense. And I think the part that we didn't see on that committee probably was that Foundation Health, clinic, many medical visits now require, are provided with a pharmaceutical solution, right? There is a prescription that comes out of it from your doctor at the end of that appointment, whether it's an emergency thing or just even preventative care. And those are all reported to Cigna. So Cigna is in fact getting probably majority of those things because wherein there's a pharmaceutical attached to that appointment or a prescription for a pharmaceutical attached to that appointment, Cigna does record that data, and so they're getting it. Just one last comment on the healthcare costs. So 9% is not terrible. It is a little bit more volatile than I think you all were hoping for. I think it is probably more volatile and higher than what we would expect in an ordinary year. But this was definitely not an ordinary year, right? So they started out making a bid on 180 employees with no other information than their gender and their age. They bid the contract based on that. We not only did they find out about the health of all those other people, but we added 70 employees who they began to discover things about their current health conditions through the course of that. And then next year is not going to be a normal year either, because we've added several people in the last couple of months, and we're adding another 18 people next year. So there's a certain volatility to be expected in those health insurance numbers these first couple of years. My hope is that by the end of next year, when we have mostly completed the bulk of the hiring that we're doing, we're hiring like a total of like 80 some odd positions in these 2 years, that the better information the insurance companies have about our health. And then also we won't be hiring quite so many people, and so the health insurance costs will stabilize. Does that all make sense? It is, so long as the National Healthcare Program isn't gotten rid of or something, I think that's a reasonable expectation that we would see some stabilization over the next couple of years.
Dr. Oz, let's stay.
He was gonna focus heavily on educating folks about their benefits. It was clear today in our open enrollment session that many people didn't understand how the clinic works. And after they heard the explanation and how it can be, you get a longer visit with a doctor, you don't have any payment. It's no copay, there's nothing is charged for your visit. You can visit as many times as you want. They said you could go every day if you wanted to. Some of the labs might get charged through insurance and like David said, the medication, but the office visits aren't hitting the premium. So we think with further education and just getting it out there that we'll see use increase. We didn't have we had 2 people hired middle of the year. And so there was no time for us to talk to people about these benefits, really.
Silly, do you have a question?
Yes, but I actually, I don't want to interrupt the flow of what Jen was just saying, but I do have a question about the philosophy regarding compensation.
Yeah.
So I can you remind me, do we have like something in writing like this, like the philosophy related to anything else? Like philosophy of, I mean, we have a lot of things on our like policies about like our missions, and so I was just curious, is this kind of a one-time thing?
Well, the total compensation policy is a practice in HR, and it's something that would be the lead kind of in our employee handbook, right? And so it's basically a statement of intention, and we believe it's a statement of the intention that the board communicated in the last couple of years about what we're trying to do in terms of hiring and retaining employees. So it would be at the front of the employee handbook, which is something that you guys do review, but it's not a document that we ask for. You read it and gave us feedback on it, but it was not something that you approve as a policy that goes out to everyone.
I just wondered if someone could read this and misunderstand by saying that it's a philosophy. I'm wondering if we have enough like disclaimers, or I mean, I know there's some language that says nobody is guaranteed a salary increase. I just wondering if maybe we need to have maybe something else to just sort of like, when budgeted and approved by the board. And I just wouldn't, I'm just curious if that could maybe be construed as these are the things that we absolutely will do, but there could be a time when we don't have the funding to maybe do all of the things that we've described in the philosophy. I guess I'm just thinking about that.
Yeah, it's a good point. I mean, um, yeah, we'll talk about it and then get back with you.
Okay.
That's how we operate every day is like
Right.
contingent on funding, but I think it may, we don't want to communicate the wrong message to staff.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's all good. It's just, I just, this is the lawyer brain in me going, wait, did we make any promises in this document? Maybe we just need to, see if there's a disclaimer or two that we could add.
Well, there's a paragraph in the middle of the first page that talks about the budget.
It
being
does,
set
but
by
I
the
don't-
board, and so, yeah, there could probably be more of that, but I think
Yeah.
that's helpful.
Yeah.
And some of the like verbiage that's used, I think is helpful, because it talks about the district striving to do things and aiming to do, it's not
Mhm.
like we commit under penalty of.
Yeah.
Maybe there could be something more in the budget related to how we're funded and the funding source.
Let's take a look at it. We'll take a look at it and come back with something more viable. I don't want to presume that, so if we were to see a major budget shortfall, right? So we would see a major budget shortfall in the library like we did in the past. I mean, it's a horrible thing to even talk about, but I don't know that the philosophy statement would change for the people that we keep. Right? In all likelihood, you have to make you don't go back to everybody and say, I want you all to take a 10% pay cut. You keep the people that you need to run the operation. I think we want to keep what we have in this statement intact. It may mean that some people are not employees of the district anymore, right? So it may mean that buildings close. It may mean that services close. It may mean that we lay off whole groups of people. But I think the disposition that's stated in the philosophy is one that we would want to, for the people that are here, we are offering them competitive salaries and benefits that allow them to grow in their life and in their jobs. And so I don't know, that's the lens which I'm gonna look at it through, not the idea that we would suddenly just not be competitive because we're trying to squeeze more juice out of the turnip. We still have to continue to be an employer of choice even when times are tough, I think.
We can have employers council to
Yeah.
look it over.
You mentioned that the public's potential audience for that document as well. Does it get published someplace that's available to the public other than
I
our
don't
meeting
know.
packet?
I
It
think
may-
probably it is.
With where jobs are posted. I
Everywhere.
know that some prospective employees have asked for it.
Yeah. I had another question related to the benefits survey. So this year it seems like we did that right before we went into open enrollment, which
Yes.
probably means we couldn't take anything from that survey and change next year's benefits because it was too late.
It's too late.
Is there a plan to change the timing of next year's version of this survey such that you could come to us with changes to benefits if that was something that was needed? Okay, cool. That was
I
my-
didn't feel like we had even time to shop around, so.
No, I get it. And I appreciate getting it together. I think it's good data to see. I think it'll be an interesting conversation next year when you're thinking about what benefits you want to offer in 2026.
But is the survey going to be done every year? I thought I was hearing that it was going to be done every 2 years.
Compensation survey would be done every 2 years.
Years, okay.
Benefit survey, we'll certainly ask them about.
This is informal. We just did this in-house.
Okay.
HR team put it together.
Okay, so one question I had was in that summary page on 67, that the health benefits are not compelling enough for 35% of employees.
So they say in their spouse, right? So if
Right, like that just surprised me, like, so that means then that, like we've talked about, like our base of 140 employees. And so, in a program designed to serve like all of them, but it's just 2/3 of that, basically, are in our program. I mean,
How does that compare to like other organizations?
well, our plan is better than what we had with the city. It is not comparable if you are a professor at the university. It is comparable if you are staff. There are some corporations that still pay 100% of your.
Yeah, no, I mean, I mean, so like, do we know other comparable organizations, what percentage people take the benefits versus don't?
We could ask, but maybe somebody would have that information, but no, I don't know. I don't know the numbers that far off. I mean, I talk to a lot of them. I mean, and yeah, if your husband is a doctor at the hospital and you have two kids, you're better off just staying on his plan and not opting into ours, even though the clinic maybe sounds nice.
I was gonna say,
And there's not a whole lot of loss to go to the clinic. They may go to the clinic, but otherwise they're not really that interested.
35% didn't actually seem high to me for people not taking it, because
Yeah.
there's so many different ways people do this and how like it's structured and.
I just thought, like, just what I knew about, maybe some employees that I didn't think that they had that option. I was surprised by the number. Because I was always thinking that we were trying to shape this around the fact that the majority would be participants in our program. Not that that's good or bad. I just like, that was just an observation. I'm not just sharing my view of it.
I told David this already, but I think we should get this participation rate up to like 80%, above 80%.
In our survey participation.
For survey participation, if we can.
How about
supervise? To all the supervisors, talk to their employees, how important, because what this tells me, like, it doesn't really tell me a ton, like, because I'm assuming that the other 40 people or 37 people that didn't take it are happy with you know what I mean? So, or perfectly fine. And so, I'd like to make decisions as a board, and like I said to David, like, we're not going to change anything if everyone looks happy, if it looks happy to everyone. So if people aren't happy, they need to take a survey. And so at my company, we try to get, at least when we do these, at least over 80%, because I think it's like statistically more valid from a thing. So next time you guys put it out, can you please, enthusiastically ask people to take the survey. So.
Yes.
Well, the thing that struck me is the percentage of pharmaceuticals that are antidepressants. So I don't know how happy people are. And I'm saying that seriously. That's not a joke.
Well, no,
I think investing in employee well-being is critical, in particular when I see a stat like that,
Yeah, my wife's a psychologist, so the phone doesn't stop ringing.
Business is booming.
Yeah, it's the state of the world. So, okay. Any more direct updates?
Two things. One, the Warner Charitable Trust. So we are looking at, Warner Charitable Trust, for some of you that have been around or have been around before, Bud Warner was a factor of the library in the 80s, led a lot of stuff in getting these ballots in the 80s to approve of the ballot building. A strong advocate, was on the foundation. And so most of the donations of its all of them except for Bud Warner, I just think they go through the foundation. And so we're looking into the possibility of transferring that trust to the foundation. It would come at no cost to us. It just would mean that instead of once a year, you all saying like, we certify the $6,000 or $8,000 or whatever the trust pays us in that year, it would be a responsibility of the foundation, and that money would come back that we would draw upon in the budget process. So that's something to consider. Then lastly, I wanted to say that we are waiting on mechanical and electrical drawings for the gun barrel. We need those before we would have a permit. I'm hopeful that we're going to see those drawings right after Thanksgiving. The other great thing about getting those drawings then is that we would be able to get a rough price of the cost of a majority of the renovation on furniture and that kind of stuff. But we could bring that back to you in December. It's required for applying for the permit, right? So we'll get the drawings, the date we get them, we're going to turn them in for proposing for a permit to do it, but we'll bring you also the cost, I hope, at your December meeting, so you can say yes. And ask whatever questions you have. And that's it.
There's still a procurement agreement at the end of the contract.
Oh, okay.
too.
Yeah, I'll find one.
Just quickly, I know I asked this thing in the foundation, but for the benefit of those here, can you give the quick update on the Novo playground?
Yeah, so Novo
I'm sorry,
Playground.
I'm not here to make you get bad news all the time. Thank you.
So we hit some snags, right? So, if you remember, originally the playground, the majority of the funding came from the foundation through a grant. We had thought we had secured Franson Pittman, who was the contractor for the building, to construct the playground in conjunction with the city contract. In the end, they opted out, left a few things unfinished, and there was a negotiation between the city, who was the building owner. And so we did agree, I agreed, well, that we would go with a different contractor to complete that. And so the snag is, we can't actually, we have not been able to use the permit that was already opened for the playground. There are some aspects of it that we can use, but the majority of it, we have to go back through the permitting process, which has caused some delays for construction to begin. We had thought initially we were going to be able to begin for the end of this year, but now it is, I think we're anticipating an April date for completion of the playground. That includes the slide, which is both inside the building and outside the building. That requires other examination as well, because that was not completed by Franson Pittman, and so there will be some cost associated with that to get that part completed, because the infrastructure is not adequate to support the access point. And so we're looking at a number of options. And I've been talking to the architect and Franson Pittman and the new contractor and anybody else that wants to talk about access to a slide that's both inside and outside of a building. We're gonna get that slide done. It's not a question about whether we will. The access point might be slightly different than what it had initially been proposed as, but yeah, it's an unfortunate delay. It is the most frequently asked question at Novo Library is, when is the slide gonna be open? And the answer now, if you were asked that in the community, and I'm sure you probably are, we're looking at the springtime, April. All these dates are fungible, right? And I'm notorious among the staff for like pushing deadlines, 3 months before anybody else says they think they're gonna get done. And remarkably, we do it most of the time, which is astonishing. But so that's why we say summer with summer is contingent upon a permitting process that can take 4 weeks or could take 16 weeks, right? The time frame for getting signage on the outside of a building, like at Gun Barrel, is between 3 and 7 months. So we are applying for the signage now, but it's 3 to 7 months before an outdoor sign permit is given. So all of these things take time, and I think the intention is good, although the permitting process, the city code on the I love this. The city code on sign code, you have to read it for yourself.
No, I've read it.
It refers to earthbound advertisers. Earthbound advertisers is a phrase that's in the code, not in quotation marks. They refer seriously to earthbound advertisers.
As opposed to.
Planes that drag banners.
And or extraterrestrial.
Oh,
Like obviously extraterrestrial.
Right.
oh, I hadn't thought of that.
No, I've,
Or subliminal messages.
Yeah.
Like there's all kinds of.
I say just think, okay. Great.
Earthbound advertisers with physical assets are under some serious restrictions. And others are restricted because earthbound ones are restricted, right? The extraterrestrial advertisers also have limitations because of what an earthbound advertiser could do. It's fascinating.
they won't move to Boulder.
David, David, with regard to our Earth-based funder, the Colorado Health Foundation, I'll give them our 2-year anniversary update due December 1st on that playground. And then technically it's a 2.5-year window. So June 1 is when it technically needs to finish. They're very good about extenuating circumstances, being understanding about that. But that's my communication timeline with them. And it can change if need be.
We have like a project page that
You have the
is
money,
keeping the
right?
public up to date on.
Y'all have the money.
Yeah.
We have a project, but it's not up to date.
I just want to make sure you don't have to give it back.
If we have any on the internet that says it's gonna open by the end of the year, we should probably update that.
We have anything about the playground?
Is it still a hole in the ground or?
No, they've moved some stones,
Okay,
which
yeah.
also necessitate some permitting, and we have to get a license from the state and some other stuff that we did fill out those applications, and so we're just waiting on word back. I don't think it's gonna be a major deal. So the city had held all of these things. It just turns out that, I mean, and I get it, right? Like, I say that as politely as I possibly can. The city doesn't want to have any of the liability around the playground. And so like whatever permits and or licenses they took out in surrounding to them, we are doing them now again. And since the funding for the playground was not a part of the original project, but rather an ancillary part of the project, I think they feel comfortable in just saying like washing their hands of it. It's not like they don't know us, but like nobody's picking up the phone.
Maybe that's the excuse we go back to the city is we want to complete the North Boulder playground. Please give us the buildings. So, yeah.
Can I ask you, outside of the makerspace, the digging, is that like just another foundational line?
It'll
What
be
is that?
patio, and then there will be planters along the edge of it and a barrier as well. But it's for an outdoor makerspace. So the garage door is
Okay.
open and we can actually do stuff outside.
And is that impacted by the playground?
It's part of it. We
Okay.
had the same we asked the same contractor to do both.
Both pieces? Okay,
It's all part of the same project.
okay.
Set a grand opening
Yeah.
for April 1st
Ground opening,
on March 31st.
Do anything?
huge party.
Oh, yeah, April 2nd.
My father died on April 1st, which I think is a good one.
So I am.
Only time I'm rolling that
That one, some other tears.
I know.
I thought they were kidding.
You're like, all right, trustee matters. Tom, did you have anything or?
I talked to Doug about this. So, Saturday was the drag queen story hour.
Yeah.
And I had heard rumors Friday night when I was here at the Modus Transformation Stories that we upped the security around it. There were some concerns about it, so I came just to be a representative of the board. And I would guess there were somewhere between 50 and 70 volunteers with the parasol patrol. It was awesome. It was particularly awesome watching all these little faces walk through the swirling umbrellas as they came into the library. And so I asked Doug, is it in our interest to put some resolution together thanking them for showing up?
Yeah,
Or
they-
would that trigger something else? And so I.
No, they would probably appreciate, I have known them for a long time. So they started in Denver around a bookstore.
Yeah.
And they've been with us from the beginning, I think for 8 years doing drag queen story time.
Yeah.
We had a new group this year called Free Mom Hug.
They were here.
They called up and said, can we come and volunteer and do stuff? And I was like, sure. So I think Safe Boulder also inquired. So there was a lot of public interest, and that's been our experience, right, with drag queen story time. So we received more complaints on drag queen story time, more threatening letters of people who are going to have hundreds of people here or 1,000 people sign a petition or honking cars, horns and everything else. I take them all seriously. I think those people are concerned for a lot of different reasons. I mean, we have talking points. I'm typically pretty solicitous, like what exactly is your concern? I think the extent to which it has been manipulated politically for quite some time now, really, not just recently, but for quite some time, is the manner in which a lot of things are glommed onto story time. So if you have not been to Drag Queen Story Time and you have any ambiguity in your mind, you need to go to this event. And so it is an awesome event that is meant in a sense to communicate that we all have a place here, all belong, and everyone is deserving of some form of love. And that is a powerful message. And I think I don't want to disparage the people who do not like it either. I think a lot of it is conditioned by ideas that they may have around, medical and drug therapy for young people. I think there are questions about child abuse, all these things that become glommed on in one kind of coherent thing around anything having to do with people who are different than them, but particularly around any kind of non-cisgendered type of activity. And so to that extent, like I usually say, can you tell me what your concern is? And can you give me one concrete, verifiable example from a credible source where this thing happened? Because story time is not about any of this. We're not talking about gender.
And I'm
We're not talking about gender transition. We're not talking about, it is really,
I'm not worried about
reading
the
stories.
stories. I'm just thinking, these folks show up. It's quite a contribution to the community,
yeah.
and we should recognize it for that.
I think the question is, would we as a board support like a, I don't know, resolution or appreciation for the parasol, the group of, that's called Parasol Patrol?
Yeah, Parasol Patrol. It
Yeah.
started with a mom and her friend at a bookstore in Denver in
Yeah.
support of their son.
And
What is Parasol Patrol?
they are, if you come to the story hour, they have parasol, like umbrellas that are rainbow color.
Intended to shield the children from any abuse that was heaped upon them by the public as they enter an event.
Oh, it's like anti-protest.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's basically to hide
Cool.
any counter protesters.
Got it.
yeah.
I just wasn't sure. That's what I was.
And it's also to sort of human shield the event.
Yeah.
If need be, yeah. And they're a bunch, like there's a bunch of like military vets in there. I've come and talked to them, and Marine Corps vets and big burly people and also moms and other things, but
I think they would appreciate it. If you want,
Yeah.
if you want to do that,
So-
I'll get you some contact information.
so if we get like just nods, or if
Yeah.
anybody has any okay, nods, thank you. Tom, will you
I'll draft.
figure that up and maybe,
Next.
and then maybe we could contact someone there and have them come to the meeting
Yeah, sure.
in December?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think there's another drag screen story hour in December, is there? I think
I doubt if we do one in December,
I think it's,
it is one of our most popular programs. We do it now every month.
yeah. I don't think there's one in December. I think it was,
I don't think so either, probably January.
Yeah.
How often do protesters actually show up?
We've had a few over the past, but it's usually a single individual or two people.
they did sticker the facility.
They did stick with
I don't know, what did this, I mean, it wasn't like Patriot Front or,
No.
Okay.
The nature of the threats, though, are just disruptive. They're not violent. Or should I infer that there are threats of violence against this story time?
No.
Okay.
Just like we're gonna do things to make it.
Yeah.
And there was a email today, we responded, yesterday.
I thought that was a really.
We responded, we have, we've done this has been going, we've had drag queen story time for now almost a decade. So we have a lot of talking points, and I think almost every single staff member is prepared to answer questions as to why we do it, and and certainly all the managers are, and all the supervisors. That was not as much chat. So one time we had Proud Boys, right? So one time Proud Boys were involved in a lot of discussion online. That's been during the pandemic, and that was more alarming. But we take them all seriously. I don't know what's gonna happen. But taking them seriously doesn't mean we think they're gonna happen. But we have a whole staff safety protocol. We have extra staff on the event. We have, we're prepared, I think. Police.
Okay, so Tom will work on it. Thank you, Tom. So anybody else have any trustee matters?
I used the meeting room at Nobo, and the staff went above and beyond to accommodate my technology needs. So just a kudo to the Nobo staff for my clueless ability to work the technology, and they really were super helpful. That doesn't surprise me, but I just want to say that.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Also for me too. I mean, I tried to turn on the TV. Somehow couldn't figure out how to turn on the TV at El Dorado conference room. So anyway, I use the facilities quite a bit. So
You do.
um,
An experience in the Sanitas room.
Yeah, I had a meeting that was the staff, we were in the El Dorado room again, and we thought there'd be 6 people there, but with the election and people's feelings about the election, it ended up being like 40 people. And so they graciously moved us to a bigger space, also going on during the book festival. So they were nice enough to like close off the other space and move us to the Sanitas room, which is a pretty cool spot. So,
Yeah.
um,
So, and a lot of the indicators are like kind of what we anticipated so far. I don't know, we haven't seen really solid numbers to back it up yet, but one interesting thing, right? So Nobo's numbers, I anticipated that they were going to draw from Maine and we would see another drop at Maine. That has not happened, which is interesting. Meadows has seen a slight drop. And so my hypothesis is that the people in Gun Barrel who had previously gone to Meadows some of them are going to the Nobo Library, but I think the majority of the Nobo visitors, which is now roughly equivalent to Meadows and Reynolds, are, it's more frequent use of people who either already had a library card, and that we know that we got, I think, around 1,200 or something new borrowers on the day of the party. So there are probably new borrowers coming up in that community as well. For the main library, numbers are still stable, but we're starting to see an increase in use, obviously, around the meeting rooms and the cafe. So if you haven't been to the cafe, it's a little bit different than it was even a month ago. We're consistent. The product is consistent. And you said,
grab and go sandwiches are really good.
and I had one today and it was delicious.
Yeah, like $5 for a grab and go, like a croissant witch or whatever. That's what I got. I don't,
Yeah.
and they have mac and cheese
That mac and cheese was good,
for
right?
the kids.
For the kids.
No, you don't have to get kids. Apparently they're selling out of that, but
Yeah, we can't keep it.
it is a much better system, I think. So
Great.
Went on the benefit survey. I know we only had 63 responses and I didn't know involved in this, but for Benita, she was saying 35%. It would be interesting to know how many are full-time versus the 20 hours.
Very
Because
true.
about 20 hours, health, the cost is much, much higher. So if maybe half of them, 63 is not statistically significant for anything, so it's really directional. But, if you, say, okay, who are they?
Yeah.
Then you can have a good idea. Maybe those, 35%, a lot of them are 20 hours.
Yes.
Just an observation.
Yep.
There are also 5 of us here, and I feel really guilty about all the pressure you guys put, because I don't even remember when I saw the survey in my email. So there's 5 of us. How many of you filled out the survey? Oh,
I did.
2. 2. So it's 40%. 40% filled out the survey. We're here.
all right,
We're here 7 days a week, folks.
all right.
Well, the other thing I would be concerned about is that line about depression medication. Just because it's not footnoted, it's, I don't know where the number really comes from or what people might have responded to in the survey that surfaced as.
From Cigna.
Okay, well then, like that makes it look like it's the employee. I mean, that's where I was reading it, like it's the employees that responded to the survey or something, right?
I get it.
Where in here, we mentioned that it was data from the survey as well as from Cigna, but
Yeah, but you don't know, yeah, I just think it's not a,
okay.
It's a good
don't wanna,
start.
like, have it out there, right?
It's just like dirty.
It's a good start.
This,
Yeah.
Yeah, but just sensitive to that
Um,
and what people might interpret related to that as they come into the library.
So
so without any further ado,
You want
legal,
David,
legal update, sorry.
David, one thing, can you make mention of the piece of art that is on the table there?
yes,
If other people,
Benita asked me to bring this. Sylvia, you can't see it. It'll be in the cafe area by the time you come back. But so, in any case, when we separated from the city, the agreement was that the art where it was would stay where it was. And so we had a bunch of stuff that the city called us up and said, you gotta come and get all this stuff. It was in the basement of a parking garage. And when we pulled them all out, I found this painting and a drawing by Gwendolyn Mew, who was the founder of the Boulder Arts Guild in 1925. She was a very relatively famous painter. She won like the best woman artist from the Kansas City Art Institute. She won a lot of awards, I guess, in the 20s and 30s, and then became somewhat well-known painting mountain scenes in Ward, and her work is held. I mean, there's a painting of hers at the Denver Museum of Art, not like this, though. It's actually an outdoor scene with a village board. But I found these very compelling, and I don't know. I mean, you don't have to like the style or not, but on the back was written, a citizen applies for his rights, who is the person obviously on the left, wearing a tie with the heavy eyebrows. And it's interesting because in the drawing that she's done as well, there are these two figures off to the right, appear to be African-American. And it's interesting, as they apply for their rights, they're not sitting at the table, they're at some distance. What's highlighted about them is the white on their ears, so they are listening, and the paper that they have in their laps. And so if this was painted in 1922 or before,
During Jim Crow.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's quite an interesting painting. The other one is a drawing, and it's in my office. If you want to see it, it'll be hanging in the cafe as well. It's a drawing of a bunch of men around a table, having a big discussion. And then in the background, in this case highlighted in red, is a woman who appears to be African-American holding a child. I mean, it's fascinating work for somebody in the 20s and 30s, even more. And I think she did these, they lived in Oklahoma prior to coming to Boulder in the 20s. And then I think it's been in storage for probably 60 years. So we had them, we pulled them out, and there's a lot of really interesting things that we pulled out of that bunch. So I'm gonna hang a bunch of them on the bridge soon. And there are a few in the outer office near my office as well.
Thank you.
All right. Legal update. Anything, Kim, from you?
Nope, just real quickly, we'll take that budget resolution, and there's about 15 things we have to attach to it now because of
Okay.
another new statute. We'll do that, file it with the Division of Local Governments, and before December 10th, we will certify your mill levy, and we'll work with Jennifer to get that done, and then you're on your way for 2025.
Do we need to sign anything, Kim, or? will you
Yeah,
send it
I think Jennifer has the signature page.
Uh,
Somebody does. If not, we'll get it to you.
Yeah, why don't you, could you,
Oh.
well, it says draft.
Oh,
It says draft.
no, we have,
You have it? Okay.
but not here. Do we have it?
I'll come by and sign it later this week or something.
Is it only Doug that needs to sign it?
Two people.
Or Sylvia or somebody, but we don't have to sign at the same time.
Right.
Or you
And
can turn it off now.
Are electronic signatures okay?
We need a wet signature, and
Okay.
there's no rush though. If we get it next week or something, that's fine.
We can print
All right, well, I'll just wait here.
It's due by the 10th, isn't
Yeah,
it? Of
yeah.
December.
December.
Okay.
Okay, so thanks everyone for coming.
And our next meeting
Our next meeting is the third Tuesday of the month. I think it's
17th. 17th of December.
17th of December. Correct. Meeting adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Doug,
night.
did
I can.
ever Sylvia sign a
Where are you, Sylvia?
engagement letter?
I'm in
with
South
the
Dakota.
clinic?
I send that.
Yeah,
I was
good place.
It's very windy.
Neither.
Probably.
It's windy tonight too.
Probably up to the